Hello, welcome back to From Soft Serve. Today we're looking at Dark Souls 3, and something I've wanted to do for a long time for Dark Souls 3 is remove the bluish hue, or tone mapping, essentially. Not really tone mapping, I guess it's not technically in the tone mapper, but anyway, basically the game uses a lot of blue light, or just the blue color in general in a lot of its light. Like in my mod, I've already gone through and removed actual point lights that use the blue color. But those are different from the like sun shadows, basically, and the light that comes from the sun. That it was set to pretty much have bluish tones to most of it. So you'll see in Firelink Shrine here, I've removed the blue tone, and it's more of a just neutral, dark sort of setting. Beyond that, I've also removed the hero lighting, just as like a test, from the Firekeeper as well. And so you'll see the shadow casting light I put here, basically, it casts off of her, but she's also lit by it. And so I just think it looks really nice. She's normally like abnormally lit. I also added some candles around where she sits here, so she'll have some nice light on her when she is sitting here. Otherwise, she was like dark, and I was like, yeah, all right, that's probably that's not ideal. I might be placing more candles around here because I actually think the candles look pretty awesome, and they have their own like illumination baked into them. That it's actually pretty nice. But let's go to High Wall of Lothric, because I've also removed the blue tint there as well. I've also removed baked lighting, which I'm trying to remember if that's what I talked about in my last video. Maybe. I've removed more, so it's still worth talking about, I suppose. In this video, I do want to point out I do not have any like super image altering reshades active. I just have the SMAA for better anti-aliasing, because the in-game anti-aliasing is kind of dog shit, because it's FXAA and it's not particularly good. So I'm using SMAA, but that is it. I do not have anything else active right now, so that way you can see how the mod itself looks. And there are a couple reshade effects I do like using. I do find that weird. I don't know why why do you shadow the front of the chair, or like the back portion? Because yeah, in this area, I don't know if I've talked about it before. I just forget, so I'm just going to say anything. But you'll notice the grass is no longer abnormally lit. It is actually lit the same as the environment that it's in, which should have been sort of logical, but for whatever reason, they made it way brighter than everything else. So I altered that pretty quickly. I've also removed baked lighting out here, and so now you have more realistic shadows that are based on the actual like geometry. Commonly, they had shadows that were just sort of not based on anything. They were just highly like inaccurate, but such is life. Oh, that guy's having a rough week. He probably has a hangover, I would imagine. All right, all right. So we have our interior space. Nothing too crazy up here, but you'll notice even in the darkness, there's less of the bluish hue. I have some Twitter pictures I'll show. I find that to be the easier way of showing comparisons realistically. You'll also notice by removing the baked lighting in here, you now have a little bit of light coming in this room, which is pretty sick nasty. But yeah, Dark Souls 3, with all of the changes I've made thus far of increased contrast, removing the blue hue, adding dynamic shadows, and it's all culminating in I think it just looks awesome. The game looks so much better for not having that bluish tone to it, because it's just, they used it fucking everywhere. I think the worst offender is Bloodborne. That's still the one that oh my god, they use it literally everywhere. And it's just kind of like their jam. I don't know. I think it's just kind of their art style. They just kind of prefer cooler tones. And maybe it's something to do with the fire dying out, right? So you would go for colder tones than warmer tones. And yeah, I think that checks. But such is life. anyway, removed baked lighting here as well, so you actually get, oh, fuck me. Okay, I'm gonna try doing this without a HUD. So this is raw gamer skill here, just so everyone knows. This is also an unupgraded weapon. I keep forgetting to upgrade anything on this character because I'm only using this character for modding, basically. Because I can't use my high-level character on some of the maps because it has the big dark sign up in the sky, and it actually changes the G param that's being used, and so it just doesn't really work for that. You will never not hit me. You are. Why are you the way that you are? Why are you the way that you are? But yeah, so quick look at removing the blue hue. I'll actually show you how I do it as well, because it's actually pretty easy. It surprised me, but I do have a glitch. It's not really a glitch. I think it's how the game engine is functioning. So basically, the one thing I removed was basically where the baked shadows were. How did the game handle making your character dark as well? Because they're baked, they're just like a texture on the ground, so it's not actually casting a shadow, right? And so it's not actually going to darken your character. So they had a crafty solution where based on where you were at in the game world, it would darken your character, but based on where the baked shadows were, it would just darken it. It was called the player mask. And so I disabled that because I was removing baked shadows, and the first thing I noticed is that my character would still be dark even though there's light coming in. So as you'll notice here, I'm not actually casting a shadow. That is a limitation I have not fixed yet. I'm assuming it's in the G Params somewhere. I haven't seen anything that would be even close to named something like that. It sounds like a shadow mask of sorts, because this was previously covered by baked shadows. And so the game engine is like, oh, so you don't need a dynamic shadow, right? And I'm like, no, I want the shadow. Please cast the shadow. And if you walk forward just a bit, the game engine goes, oh, you're now in a spot where we know there should be a dynamic shadow. And so they were doing this in the base game, but because there's baked shadows, you didn't really notice that much. But there are times you can actually notice that they're turning it on or off. Now, of course, you could ask, why would they turn it on or off? I mean, performance reasons. Is it a huge performance saver? No, it's just your shadow. But, when you're trying to, fit them on the consoles, presumably, it is something I wish they probably would have just turned off for the PC version, like for certain settings. But you'll see it turns on and off. It's pretty annoying, but so far I'm just pushing forward with removing the baked lighting anyway, because I know myself well enough by this point that I'll figure it out. I'll figure out how to remove that. Man, the shimmering is still pretty bad. Yeah, SMAA on its own. It's no TAA. But yeah, so let's say we wanted to remove one portion of baked lighting, because you have to basically do it per map piece. And so let's say we're right here, and we want to remove a piece of baked map. And so let's actually unload. This is my Dark Souls 3 DS Map Studio project. We will load up High Wall of Lothric. And basically, we need to go find where we were standing. So you see a lot of the distant geometry that they're using. Let's turn off collisions. That's the blue highlighted stuff. That's gone. So it's not up here. That's the other one. I always get turned around in this place. I think it's this. Yeah. So one thing you can do. This map piece is 900,220 or 9220. But it's not, it's like a distant one, so it's actually not one that's being rendered when the character is close, right? So usually what I do, just to make things easier on myself, is I go find it and then I turn off the visibility for it, because I want to actually modify the actual map pieces. And so the distant ones you can tell pretty easily by the low resolution nature of them. But anyway, so if you want to remove baked lighting, here we're going to choose the floor. Because as you can tell, if you go underneath, you can tell that's actually like the whole floor. It is this one object. So it's 731. is the actual model name you'll see up here and in the name. But if you're ever in doubt, check the model name. That's the actual like one you can rely on. So we go into our Dark Souls 3 game and then map folder, and then you have to pay attention to what map are you on. And so we scroll to the top. We are on map 30, M30000000. And we basically go to, this is similar to, actually it's pretty much identical to the way that Dark Souls 1 functions, in that we are looking for, there's two separate folders that are basically related to that map. So you'll see the M30000000. That one has all of your actual model files. But in this case, that's not what we're actually going for. We're going for the M30 folder. So basically all the folders that don't have all the extra zeros, that's where your textures are stored. So we're looking for M30, and then you'll see these pop up, which we have our standard TPF, BDT, and BHD files, which is where your standard textures are stored. And this is what I really enjoy about Dark Souls 3. They put their baked lighting in a separate TPF file. It's so nice. Dark Souls 1 shoved it in with all the TPF files, and so you had to open up each one of them, and then they were parsed through there, or they were parceled out, and so you're like, oh, well, let me go look for this. And so it's a lot easier in Dark Souls 3. You basically just open up your GI inv file, and you crack that bad boy open by yabbering the BHD, or witchy BND, the BHD file here, and it's going to open up into the actual file that has all of them in it. And what you'll notice very quickly is they're listed by the map piece name. So the M000731, you're actually going to see it right here, M000731. And you can open that up, and then, so basically I yabber the ones that I want. The things you're going to notice very quickly is 731, you'll actually have multiple, quite a few. And so the ones that you're going to skip are the _L, as those are like the low quality variants that are only used for lower graphic settings. So I don't mess with those. It just saves me a little bit of time. And so I basically select the ones that I do want to open, which do not have the L. You crack those bad boys open, then you go up to the top, and that's where you're going to see the actual DDS files themselves. And basically you open them, and originally they're mostly like transparent with like some little specks on them, and then I just paint them black, and I just save them as DDS BC7 texture compression, as that is thankfully what Dark Souls 3 uses, being DX11 based. It's delightful. And then when you're done with that, you just yabber the light map back into its TPF DCX file, and then you go back here, and then you yabber the overall M30 folder TPF thing, GI inv file, and then that is going to throw it back into the official file that the game can now use. And yeah, so it's pretty quick. It's not like that. That is your quick way of messing with that. Beyond that, if you want to remove the blue hue from maps, that's actually also pretty easy. So we know we're on map M30, and the other thing you'll need to check here first before we do that is when you're like selecting items or objects or map pieces, basically select them, scroll down in DS Map Studio, and you will see a G Param config down here. And this will tell you which G Param that this map piece is using. And by default in DS3, I swear like 90+% are using 0. They just use 0 across the board. So it's pretty easy. Like they don't tend to mess with that a whole lot. But sometimes it'll vary a little bit. But basically you go back to your Dark Souls 3 folder, you go to Param, Draw Param, and then this is where you get into the Draw Params. And the thing that we're looking for is, once again, listed by the map that you're on. So M300000, and you'll see there's different G Params. So there's the G Param with the 10 at the end, and then 0. So 0, this is the one that's currently being used. 10, I believe, is the one that gets used when there's the dark sign up in the sky or whatever. And then there's the other ones for 100, 110, and those I believe relate to either 1 or 2 or whatever number is being used in DS Map Studio. The 100 represents the one. It's a different way of doing it when they could just 0 and then there's a 1 at the end, but such is life. Mostly you just yabber open the 0, and it then creates an XML file. In the XML file, you can open up with, technically you can open up with Notepad. And that's how I've done most of my edits. But you can also open it in a better one, which is Notepad++. And it has, the main reason really, because I've done most of mine in like the regular Notepad until I got smart. And I was like, you know what? But basically the reason for that is in Notepad++, you can actually Control Z to undo things, but you can undo multiple things in a row, whereas in Notepad, it will only undo the last thing that you did. And so if you've changed other things, you're fucked. I noticed that on one of them, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to switch. But yeah, so this is the M30 G Param. This is where they control a lot of the things that happen on the map and how they look, and the SSAO and the shadows, and this is where all of that is stored. Normally, all of this info, like for Dark Souls 1, all of this is in DS Map Studio. In the draw params, you can edit here. But for DS3, you have to modify it through the G Param itself. I'll make this a little bigger. Although that didn't actually. Look at that. Yeah, there you go. I think you guys should be able to see that pretty well. Yeah, you'll see some Japanese comments. I've actually translated some of them, and I'll have to look at more of those. But basically, they do have like English names, which is nice. So like directional light angle, and they handle all the angles of where the light, and I'm assuming where the like sun light is going to be coming from. And so I haven't really messed with that. But if you want to remove the blue hue, it's actually in the directional light diff color. And then down below is the spec color. And there's like 2 or 3 of these. Basically, you go through, and the thing I was looking for was what I was used to with Dark Souls 1, where they handle their colors by using, it's, you know, standard RGB, and it's like 255, 255, 255, 255 is your top end, and then your 0 is the bottom, right, which is black, and then 255 all across the board is white. Basically here they're doing it different, where 1 is your highest number, and then 0 is your lowest, and so basically it's R, G, B, and then your alpha setting is the last one. And so that's why your alpha one can go above 1, but the other numbers do not go above 1. As far as I've seen. It shouldn't, as obviously that the 1 is equal to 255, and the 0 is equal to 0. So you have to modulate that. I prefer the DS1 system, personally. But basically, I hovered through here, and I was keeping an eye on the 3rd number, which is the blue channel, right? Because basically that number was commonly bigger. So like you'll see here where it was 7.6 for red, 7.5 for green, and then the blue was commonly like 1 or 89 or 95. It was always way higher, and that's how you got the blue hue. And so basically I just went through and I went line by line, and I just changed all of them to either be equal or raise. Well, basically, yeah, I mainly just did that. Or I ignored the ones where the red was already higher than the blue, because I'm okay with that. I like a warmer tone. And you'll see some of these here, the red and the green were already higher. So I'll see if I have to even those out sometimes. But and I didn't mess with the alpha settings. I kept those the same, because if I started changing those, that could start making things look real fucking weird. And then directional light sharpness, I ignored that. The SSAO weight, I did actually raise to 1. Sometimes this would be set to like 0.7, so 70%. So if you just keep that in your mind of like percentages, and then 0 to 1 as your range, it's a lot easier. But the light angle I skipped, and then we have more diff color, your diffuse color. And then the spec color I also was modifying, because those are, you do need to do both of them. The specular is like when you're tilting the camera and looking around and you see sort of how the floor especially in the high wall of Lothric. You know, that's where a blue tone would also be. So it was important to do the specular color as well. And then SSAO weight, and then local light angle once again. I don't know that I've actually gone through for the local light diff color. I may not have. Oh yeah, I don't think I did the local light color. Interesting. I'll have to do that off video recording because that's not going to be very interesting. That's just change number. Change the number. I'm not 100% sure. So the local light versus directional light. Well, that's directional light, local light. Directional light. Oh, maybe I just skipped one. Directional light spec. Yeah, so directional light spec color. And then this is directional light, local light. I don't know, 100% know. I'll have to message Trivia on that. She'll know for sure. She's been helpful with all of this. Super helpful. She's the DS3 G Param master. And I was like, yeah, all right. SSAO weight. Yeah, so there's a lot of little things in here. I guess I haven't done the local light. I'll have to look into that. Because, yeah, you'll see the blue tone is actually higher for a lot of these as well. Not all of them, but there's commonly like 1 and then 60%, 72%. Interesting. Because I'd like to change that as well. Yeah, I don't think there should be anything that I want the blue tone to be higher. I just really don't. Directional light Hemi color up, I haven't really messed with. They all look the same. But yeah, anyway, pretty easy. Basically, you make your settings, and then you hit save, and you go back to your draw params, and then you yabber it, and it will kick it back into the .gparam.dcx, and you just go back to your game. That's kind of the classic thing. I'm pretty sure I've said it before, but sitting at the bonfire does not work. You actually, because that does not actually reload the map. You actually have to, the best way is to dark sign. I used to log out a lot, and sometimes I still do. I log out because I'm not near a bonfire when I'm doing my changes. But yeah, let's go to my Twitter real quick, because I feel like that might be a good way to also say, hey, follow me on Twitter. It's actually a good thing, a good reminder, in that if you don't see a video about one of the projects I'm working on, I'm probably still working on it. I post on Twitter more than I post on YouTube, just because it's a lot easier, obviously. Like this is a funny one where I actually found a lighting transition that's really goofy. I need to fix this. So when you walk forward a little bit, it changes the lighting being used, and then it actually loads in the swamp right in front of you. Oh, it's terrible. It's one of the worst. And so this is actually a good example of all of this sunlight that you're seeing here was not present before I stripped out the baked lighting. This was all darkness. For whatever reason, they were like, nah, we know our shadows reach here, but we're just going to darken the whole thing. I'm assuming that's just so they didn't have to render dynamic shadows. But then again, they could have baked. They could have baked this, right? All of this is bake-worthy. So this is a good example of a before and after. I guess I'll make it a little bit bigger for... Well, that doesn't really make it that much bigger, does it? Yeah, so you'll see this was all darkness. But because I have removed the player mask, that's how I know where areas need their baked lighting removed. It's actually pretty useful. So the player mask, you'll tell my characters is bright, and so I go, oh, so light should be coming here. And then I go in and just by the method I showed you, remove the baked lighting, and you go, oh shit, there was meant to be light there. And so these are a couple examples of High Wall of Lothric. We don't need to look at that because I've already shown you that. And that is game turns off the player shadow based on... Oh yeah, so that one I haven't figured out. Here's a little bit of Undead Settlement where right here you'll see the bluish hue removed. And then this is how much blue hue the game, by default, loves to use. It's everywhere. It's insane. So, and this is also an instance where these buildings actually load in the trees nuts fight. This is when you look back the other way. So I actually modified that, and now they load in correctly earlier. And so here's better pictures of the now more contrasty undead settlement. Interesting thing I also fixed, I forgot to say it in the actual like recording of the video, but up here, if you'll notice, these buildings stand out as they seem like washed out. This is actually due to their fog param setting, or fog G param setting. So what I did is I went in really quickly and I modified them to use the same G param as these other buildings, and now they actually fit in perfectly fine. But that was just an instance where they either had the wrong one. But yeah, if you'll see all this, this is all from like the last 2 days. So for the people who are like, he's not working on these mods, like, no, I work on them. I just mostly post it to Twitter, like progress pictures, and then I do photo dumps to Patreon. And so the YouTube content is much delayed because, well, obviously it takes more effort to make the video, right? Yeah, and this is where I released Ember's mod 0.30, which I guess is a good thing to say in this video. It is released. You can go to the page and download it, and yeah, try it out, because the current version has some baked lighting removed, the player lantern's gone, the player mask is disabled on most of the maps by this point. The bluish hue is not removed in the current version yet. Not yet. That is, I'm still working on that, but you can definitely download the current version. I will be uploading a new version, probably soon, I would think. So anyway, let's go back to Dark Souls 3. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at Dark Souls 3 in the mod, and let me know if you think it looks good. Do you enjoy not having the bluish hue barfed everywhere? I'm assuming some people really like the bluish hue, of course, and you know, as per usual with anything, I'm assuming there has to be people that really enjoyed it. I just I did not. I thought it was a bit much. So, ooh, actually, is there baked lighting to be removed here? I think there is. Hold on, can we do a super time fun cool thing? Because I feel like, yeah, you can actually tell. I think the baked lighting is supposed to be removed here. You'll see how my character is bright, but the background is dark. Ooh, can we do something fun? Because, yeah, it's at this bonfire, right? And you select it. It's this whole wall here is one map piece. Aha, 732. So let's hop back and let's do one fix live. I guess I owe you guys that, right? So let's go back to M30, GINV. Let's go down to 732, which is the thing we're looking for. And 519, 701, 730, 731, I believe I've already done. 732, we have, now skip the L's. We don't want the L's. You don't want the L's in real life? You don't want them in Dark Souls 3. Okay, so we yabber those open, and it is 732. Aha. So here's what the light map looks like by default. And it's pretty, you know, it's got like little specks on it. So what I normally try to do is just use the fill function, and then it keeps some of the info that was there, and basically just turns off the darkness. Because everything that was transparent is a shadow in the game. Like, that's how it works. So it's pretty quick, though. You can basically just open it, and then boom, do one more, booyah, and then quickly yabber the 4 of these. There you go. And we can't yabber this big file yet until we log out of Dark Souls 3, and then yabber the hell out of it. Oh, this is going to take a little while. This is the first yabber of the day, and this file's pretty chunky. It's a chunky file. So I'm gonna drink coffee while this is repacking. Okay, it loaded. It did its thing. I edited that out. Maybe. Let's load back in the game, and let's see The baked lighting. Removed. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Yeah, see, unfortunately, it disables my player shadow for part of it, because it goes, oh, that should be darkness, so let's just fuck off, shadow. But yeah, now you can tell how much of this was meant to be actually being hit by the sun, or whatever the fuck that is. Whatever you would call that. Now, it's really annoying that the shadow disappears, but I'll be able to figure that out. I'm not sure how, but I will figure that out. But yeah, now you can see it more naturally is lit by the sun. And there's a lot of examples of this where they just barfed darkness on everything. And that's the interesting thing, is I have not altered the light angle, the sun angle, the X and Y coordinates. This is the bog standard, like X and Y coordinates of the light and the angle and all that. So this light should have been there. They just, when they baked the shadows, they just barfed darkness over everything. I don't really know why, to be honest. Like, I think it's more aesthetically pleasing to have some light hit the scene, and then you could just bake a shit ton of shadows, like accurate shadows. So I don't know. It's weird to me. I don't fully understand it, to be honest. But if you enjoyed this video, a sub to the channel would be greatly appreciated. Liking the video is probably the most helpful. That's the cool thing. That's the good. I think people say. And maybe share the video if you know people that like nerdy ass Dark Souls videos. Also in the description, I do have Ko-Fi links, PayPal, and Patreon if you'd like to support the channel more. That's a good way. Patreon, you get ad-free versions of these episodes. No more annoying ads, So I try to have that be something that's nice for people paying for Patreon to make it worth it. I also post pictures of my cats sometimes, photo dumps, Google Drive links. You also get that for Patreon, so that's pretty cool. It's $5 a month. I feel like I try to make it worth it, but watching is also cool and totally fine. But I feel like I'll, throw that out there. I hope you guys have a good Christmas. I'll probably be posting another video before Christmas, but whatever, it's fine. Good holiday period, and I'll see you in the next video.